Minister of Electricity, Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, says several plans are now in place to get more electricity onto the grid, from opening new IPP bids to identifying and working on existing power stations, and even negotiating with neighbouring countries like Mozambique to supply us with desperately needed megawatts. He revealed all of this earlier today when he was briefing the media about the implementation of the country's energy action plan. And one of those people who was following that briefing very closely and got an opportunity to ask several questions is energy expert Chris Yelland, who's joining me now here this afternoon on Today. Chris, good afternoon. Welcome to Today, and thank you very much for your time. Can I start just with an overriding question first? Overall impression from this briefing, does it seem like real action, implementable, practical things are now taking place under this new minister?
Dan, yeah, thank you for having me on your show. And look, I attended the media briefing, and my impression at the end of this media briefing is that it was very rushed, very, very vague, and ultimately, for me anyway, very unsatisfying. Lots of fast talk, but very thin on detail. And I kind of am a detailed person.
What kind of detail do you think the minister should have shared? I had him throwing around some numbers of how many megawatts will get here and there and there, and what needs to be done at Kusile power station in terms of fixing the units by December. What kind of detail do you think he should have given us for you not to feel that he was vague?
Yeah, so look, I asked personally a number of questions, and a lot of other journalists also asked questions. Questions that I felt were not well answered to me anyway were, first of all, when is the new IRP going to be released for public comment? I didn't get an answer out of that. Secondly, I asked the question, he talked about 80 megawatts and 1,000 megawatts from Mozambique, 80 megawatts virtually immediately, and 1,000 megawatts in 6 months' time. And I would be interested to know more detail about these. Okay, the 80 megawatts apparently refers to a car power ship that is harbored in Mozambique and operates off heavy fuel oil, and that apparently is available. But on the 1,000 megawatts in 6 months, I thought the answer was very, very vague and unspecific, and ultimately not satisfying that there is actually some substance behind that we can expect 1,000 megawatts in 6 months, which I think honestly is very, very unlikely. But I would have loved to hear more detail as to how is this really of substance, or is it just talk? Well, I didn't get that detail, so that's the kind of lack of detail that I found a little disturbing.
The IRP, just remind our viewers again, Chris, as the energy expert, what is it and why is it important for us to get details about it and its timing?
Yeah, so the Integrated Resource Plan for Electricity was published in 2019 and is essentially out of date. It was in fact out of date on the day it was published because it took a long time to get published from the time the work completed. And we've been working on an outdated IRP for many years, and all the ministerial determinations have been made in terms of this outdated integrated resource plan. Now, first of all, what is an IRP? The IRP looks at supply and demand of electricity in South Africa in the next 10 years. And works out, what new generation capacity needs to come on stream to meet increasing demand, as well as old power plants that are going to come offline. And it's a really important plan that, I'm not saying it should be prescriptive, but we need to have done the thinking, and we need to be procuring electricity based on rational, up-to-date thinking. And now this has not happened. So it's really important for the new updated IRP to come out, and government has been working on this. So I asked the question today, is when is it going to be released for public comment? Because it was indicated by the minister some days ago, by Minister Mantashe, that this IRP will be presented to cabinet before the end of this year. Now, that is so vague and unsatisfactory, because is that a draft IRP being presented to Cabinet at the end of this year, or is it the final IRP? And if it's the final IRP, when is the public process taking place? Because it hasn't started yet, and we don't have the public, nobody has actually had any sight of the draft IRP, its assumptions, and it does have to go through a public process. So I'm wondering whether this draft IRP by the end of this year is a draft that is going to be submitted to the Cabinet prior to going out for public comment, or is it the final version that is going to be gazetted? Very unlikely that it'll be the final version.
Yeah, ordinarily, Cabinet will give its thumbs up. From what I know about other processes involving other documents and areas, Cabinet gives its thumbs up, and it should be out for public comment in a gazette. But we'll have to wait and see. And in the meantime, Chris, we have to keep on asking that question: when are we going to see this new IRP? Now, he also spoke about the current power stations. I just want to get your views there. For example, he spoke about Kusile and saying the units will be back on stream by the 24th of December. The three ones that have been having problems in Kusile, and he also saying they are going to be giving immediate attention to 4 power stations.
I think he demonstrated a lot of confidence that these things will be happening on time as planned, and that we will see, for example, unit number 5 at Kusile, which is a unit that experienced a fire, that unit would be coming on stream in October. And then the other 3 units, that's units 1, 2, and 3, that are shut down because of this flue ducting failure, that would come on the first unit in November, and the other 2 units in December. Now, that is very welcome, and I just hope that, in fact, those dates will be met. He seems very confident that they will be met, but well, let's wait and see. But if that does happen, that will bring on something like 3,000 megawatts of capacity that is currently out of service as a result of these breakdowns. That'll be very, very welcome indeed. And we just hope that there are no further failures. So, you know, sometimes it happens that you bring on units back onto the grid, and then other units fail and go off the grid. I think it's a bit premature to say that we're going to have an additional 3,000 megawatts by the end of this year. We certainly hope so, but there may be other breakdowns indeed. But I do appreciate his confidence and him letting us know and making definite commitments that he, will be held to those commitments. But it is good to see that level of confidence about these units coming back on stream, and I hope he's right.
Okay. Final question to you, Chris, this afternoon. Many of us, unlike you, who are not energy experts, who see the load shedding stages go up to 6, we think, oh, the grid is going to collapse. The minister today saying the fact that we're load shedding means we are not going to have a grid collapse. He used the words that it's highly improbable. Is that the understanding that if there were not load shedding, we would then have a big problem with the grid possibly collapsing?
I think he's absolutely right that a grid collapse, or what we call a national blackout, is a very unlikely event. It is a very high consequence event. And the risk, therefore, is not insignificant, because risk is a combination of the probability of event and the consequences of that event. The risk is so high that insurance companies are refusing to insure that risk. Now, that doesn't mean to say it's a high probability event. It does mean to say it's a very high consequence event that insurance companies are uncomfortable with insuring. So I agree with him in that regard. And another thing I would like to make the point, people often ask me, is the risk of load shedding increased because we have stage 6 load shedding right now? And my answer to that, I mean, if you were to say, was the risk of load shedding in 2008, when we first had load shedding, only at a lower stage, is that risk now that we have stage 6 load shedding, is it a higher risk than it was in 2008? And my answer to that is, I think the risk now is less than in 2008. Why? Because we are well practiced in load shedding. In 2008, we didn't even have load shedding schedules. We didn't have all the protocols in place that we now have. Not only do we have them in place, but we practice them every day. So we've become rather good at load shedding. And remember, load shedding is a tool to prevent a national blackout, and we've become rather good at it. Even on the world stage, we are considered experts at load shedding because of our experience. So I think, in fact, the risk of a national blackout as a result of this experience, a result of having all the protocols in place, is less now, even at stage 6 load shedding, than it was in 2008.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your insights as usual, and just reacting to what the Minister had to tell us earlier today about the energy action plan of the country.